Hi, hello and welcome to the very last video that we're going to do for the fall inspired looks using my Midnight Sun palette from McGrath Labs. As in the previous video, I've already done my base makeup. I've essentially been doing my base in exactly the same way for the past month. So we're going to start off with the color cosmetics, and I'm first going to take a very old bronzer from Too Faced. This is the Unicorn Tears bronzer. I want to say this is from 2017 and I refuse to part with it because it hasn't changed in quality. I absolutely love the undertone of this bronzer. I love the finish of it. And except for the stupid unicorn, which I absolutely cannot stand, the rest of this bronzer is actually magnificent quality all these years later. So I'm going to take a little bit of this bronzer, and I figured maybe in today's video we can chat a little bit about some of the new releases that have been popping on my Instagram and chat what I think about them. I will lead off with saying that I haven't really seen anything, so besides the Louis Vuitton release, nothing has really sparked my interest, and I am extremely happy with the lipstick that I bought from Louis Vuitton. I currently do not plan any additional purchases. I don't think I'm going to be getting an eyeshadow palette, and if you were curious about my considerations regarding the eyeshadow palette, so I've reached a conclusion that while a luxury lipstick is something I can enjoy on quite the regular basis because I rotate through my lipsticks a lot, I take them with me to work and I will pull out the component and it will just give me joy over and over again throughout the course of the day. And with the luxury lipstick I can relive this joy several times a day, whereas with an eyeshadow palette I will take it out of the drawer, I will use it, I will enjoy it, then I'll put it back in the drawer and I won't use it for another, I don't know, however many weeks or even months. So I decided that spending so much on the compact, because let's face it, with the Louis Vuitton release, 70% of what you're paying for and 70% of the experience really is centered around the component, I decided that it's just not worth it for me. The eyeshadow formula seems pretty solid. People have likened it to the baked formula from Dior, which is a lovely formula, but while I enjoy that formula, I wouldn't say that it's one of my favorites. If it was a baked gelée, like a hard gelée formula, I would have been far more tempted because it would have been a combination of a beautiful compact and a lovely formula, but as it is, the baked formula, while lovely, is not something that excites me. Now, speaking of hard gelée formula, and because I am going to be using one of my Chanel blushes, this is one of the blushes that they released last year for fall. This is the shade Rose Radiant. It's in that beautiful like cream to powder type formula. Speaking of Chanel and hard gelée, they released a collection with 4 eyeshadow palettes. The Buttons, I want to say it's called the Buttons collection because the whole aesthetic around it, excuse me, is centered around button-shaped things, including prints on the like little pouches that the palettes come in and the imprints, like embossing on the actual eyeshadows. Now that is a release that somewhat sparked my interest in the sense that it's hard gelée formula and I can't really turn away when I see hard gelée eyeshadow. So I looked at these palettes quite a few times. I even had one in my cart a couple of days ago because they did show up both on Easy Putty and Douglas, so those are the 2 retailers here in the Netherlands who also regularly do 20 to 25% off shopping nights, and these palettes were actually included in one of those latest sale events where I had one of the palettes in my cart because I could have gotten it 25% off. They're quite expensive, they're 84 euros a pop, which, considering how unimpressive the packaging of Chanel makeup is, okay, I'll gladly pay for the hard gelée formula if it's a really spectacular one, but 84 euros is pretty steep for eyeshadows. But I know they do this. They also did it with the Tweed release a couple of years ago. They're like limited edition, especially like hard gelée releases tend to be extremely expensive. Sticking with Chanel, for my highlighter I'm going to take this oversized highlighter that they released for a limited edition collection, I want to say 2 years ago, for holidays 2 years ago. This is in the shade Precious Coral, again a gorgeous hard gelée formula. So there were 4 quads featured in that release and honestly they all look really pretty, quite versatile color stories. I had my eye on the most basic B one, the one with all the brown shades, because some of those brown shades honestly look like little pieces of chocolate that I would like to munch on. But I saw some people's videos, and I want to say maybe it was Daphne from Dubs Beauty who said that a lot of, like, two of the browns actually looked rather similar when swatched and used on the eye, and I thought for a 4-pan eyeshadow palette, having two eyeshadows that look very similar to one another is not ideal. And I need another hard gelée brown, like I need a hole in the freaking head. So I decided to forego this release, even though it was very tempting. Very curious whether any of you picked up any of those palettes and what you think about them, because I might still change my mind spontaneously, but for the time being I'm really trying to resist those, because I really think they're redundant with a lot of eyeshadows that I already have across different brands, like hard gelée in the same like texture, like the hard gelée texture. So I really don't need more of the same. I'm going to set all the powders on my face with a little bit of setting spray. This is the one from Charlotte Tilbury. I'm just going to use my sponge for that. Alright, you're up close and personal. The first eyeshadow I'm going to go into is the light camel brown here. And what I'm going to do with this shade, unlike the first look where I used it across my whole crease area, today I'm just going to pop this shade here in the inner portion of my crease. So right here, and I'll take it halfway through, just on the inner portion, and then on the outer portion we're going to be using, I want to say the shade is called Vermilion Venom, the reddish matte in the palette. When I first bought this palette and I saw that shade, I was a little bit, I don't want to say intimidated, but I thought, I'm not going to have too much use for this shade, because as much as I enjoy reds are not eyeshadows that I wear a lot. But the nice thing about this shade, so the shade that I'm referring to is this one here, this brick red terracotta red, is that on the eye it comes across more as like a terracotta brown red. So there's quite a bit of brown once you lay it on the eyelids, and I ended up actually quite enjoying that shade. I'm going to take this shade now and pop it on the outer portion of the crease to connect with the camel brown. I may have overloaded my brush a little bit, so if you end up doing that, you can always take the excess off on your hand or a microfiber cloth. I use a microfiber cloth. Anyway, new releases. I saw that Natasha Denona is releasing two Homunculus palettes, which look like, I don't mind Natasha Denona eyeshadows, but I've come to realize over the last couple of years that I'm not crazy about her eyeshadow formula. It's a nice eyeshadow formula, but if I have to think about palettes that really stand out to me, the only standouts are the original gold palette and the face and eye palette in the shade light that I have. That palette is one of my absolute favorites. But the palettes that I have bought subsequently, think of something like Glam, Bronze, I Need a Nude. They're nice enough palettes, but for whatever reason they do not stand out in my collection, and I forget about them very quickly. So I've decided that I'm going to put the brakes on Natasha Denona palettes. So you will have noticed that I haven't really bought a palette from her in the past 2 years. I think I Need a Nude was the last palette I bought, and that was 2 years ago. And since then she's released a bunch of other palettes, but I just have not bought them because I'm just not super excited by her eyeshadow formula, and these two new Homunculus palettes excite me even less so, because they're full of warm-toned browns that I feel like we've seen across her range in so many palettes. Like, one of those palettes literally looks like an expanded version of the bronze palette. I think it's a light and a dark version, and the dark version is the one that I'm referring to, because there's just so much undertones and eyeshadows in there that look like stuff we've seen before. So these two palettes did not excite me one bit. So I'm putting a solid amount of Vermilion Venom, almost taking it like halfway across the lid, because I do really enjoy this eyeshadow. So when I do use it, I like to put it somewhat more in the spotlight. So I'm going to take it halfway through across the lid. Speaking of another Homunculus palette that might have piqued my interest, I've been hearing about those 18-pan palettes from Byredo for several years. But just like with those 18-pan Natasha Denona palettes that are being released, I'm not on board with these huge Homunculus eyeshadow palettes. I think it's really hard to make an 18-pan palette where you don't have a lot of redundancy, shades that look extremely similar to each other. I've seen that with their palette from last year, the Mineralscapes palette, which in theory looked beautiful, but if you looked at it a little bit more in detail, Some of the undertones in there are really beautiful, and for sure it's a really pretty palette, but there were a lot of eyeshadows that looked very similar to one another. And I have the same problem with their new palette, the Bibliophilia one, and I also have the issue that I like half of the palette because it's quite cool toned, like quite neutral cool toned, and the rest of the palette is your boring oranges and reds, and I just can't with the oranges and the reds. As you can see, I already have more than enough of those. I'm going to take the NYX glitter glue now before we apply the metallic and poppy shades. So unfortunately, while I would love to try the Byredo formula because I'm sure it's a beautiful soft slurry, I can't be bothered with their 18 pan palette. If they had released that neutral cool portion of the palette as a 9 pan, I would have been much more interested. That combined with the fact that I know from previous releases that getting these Byredo palettes is a pain in the ass. And I'm sorry, but I just do not have the time to, you know, stress over eyeshadow palette releases. Just killed my interest in that palette pretty quickly. So next, grabbing the Midnight Sun palette and this bronzy brown shade. And the bronzy brown shade, I'm going to apply that as like a very thin layer across my whole lid. And you can probably guess that we're going to layer some fun eyeshadows over top of that. That's why I'm keeping the base of that shade rather soft. Even though as it is, this look is very pretty, and for some reason I got a ton of fallout. I think I overloaded my brush, so I'm just going to flick that right away. And there we go, much better. I'm going to be more careful on my other eye, and I'm not going to overload my brush with too much of the powder. And again, I'm going in light hand, very light layer of this shade. And as you probably guessed, the next step is going to be going into this beautiful shade here, Blood Moon 005. And I'm going to apply like a quite generous amount of it, but what I will do is basically the same thing I showed in my previous video, where I don't necessarily apply this as a topper, but I more so smoosh it together with the shade underneath to create this like new kind of shade, because Blood Moon 005 on its own is quite bright, and I don't really want the look to be super bright, so I want to work it in together with that bronzy shade. I know the name of that bronzy shade, it's one of my favorite neutrals from Pat. Why can I not remember the name? Bronze Eclipse, of course, Bronze Eclipse. And I quite like the effect, it's very pretty. And I think just so we can say that we've used Astral Solstice for at least one of these looks, I'm going to grab the absolute tiniest few flecks, and I'm going to apply those in the very center portion of the lid for some extra dimension. But very, very light, because I don't want this look to go in a cool tone direction. I just want those few flecks from Astral Solstice to add a little bit more of definition to the look in the center of the lid. And again, I'm smooshing together with the other shades. I'm going to take the Skin Show shade to apply in the inner corner of my eye, and I'm also going to leave the like lower portion of my lower lid free because I want to put a different eyeshadow there. I'm thinking of doing something fun on my lower lashes, just so we can say that we've done a real fall inspired look. Okay. I'm going to clean off my brush really well, and I'm going to take now this Blitz shade, Blitz Astral shade. Gosh, what's the name of this shade? Jubilee. I'm going to take Jubilee, and I'm going to apply Jubilee just here on the lower portion of the lid, on like the inner portion of the lower lid, right here. And then to make the look even more fun, I'm going to go into the olive green shade, which is called something Wicked Envy. I was going to say something with envy, Wicked Envy. And I'm going to shove that here on the lower lashes. And to end my little new makeup release thoughts, besides those releases, I haven't really seen anything else that is even interesting enough to discuss. YSL is bringing out a holiday collection where I really like the packaging. The compacts look so stunning, and the eyeshadow palette looks cute. If I see it in store, I might swatch it, but again, same thing with the YSL eyeshadow formula. I like it enough, but I far prefer, for example, the formula from Prada. So again, I don't want to get carried away in buying things just because I want to buy something. Not to mention that I don't know why Pat is torturing us. She should just tell us what she's releasing for the holidays. It is about time. I'm saving my coin for Pat's holiday release, and I hope it's going to be a good one. Do you maybe feel like we should add just a slight bit of a dark brown? You know what? Let's do it. Let's go crazy today. Okay, going to take a little bit of the dark brown here, again on the same flat shader brush, and I'm going to apply that just here as a hint in the lash line for just the tiniest bit of definition there, because I feel like we need a little bit of definition since Wicked Envy is quite dark on the lower lashes, and I think we need to balance that out on the upper lashes. So I'm bringing in a little bit of that dark brown here and smudging it just to create a little bit of that smoky effect without really ruining the rest of the look. Okay, I feel like that's enough. And here is our final look under artificial lighting. Astral Solstice, of course, well, and Blood Moon 005 brought quite a lot of party. And I don't know what's wrong with me, I keep forgetting about this lipstick and how much I love it. So this is one of the Fetish, oh, the Divinals, these are called the Divinals, the one in the purple packaging. I don't even know if these exist anymore. Do these exist? Were they discontinued? I don't know. This is the shade Temptress, which is this beautiful, gorgeous wine-toned red, and I do really love the formula of this lipstick. This lipstick is already quite old, still fine. I also have one of the flash shades in this formula, and this is a gorgeous formula. It's very nourishing, very comfortable, and it doesn't bleed out of my lip lines. I really like this formula. It's a bummer if they discontinued it, and I don't know why I keep forgetting about this lipstick. Alright, to wrap up this series, I just wanted to say a few words about my Midnight Sun palette because she remains absolutely magnificent. I've enjoyed every second of this little mini-series. Once the winter months hit, I'm going to be using the purple and Astral Solstice together a lot more in combination with other cool-toned palettes from Pat McGrath Labs. But yeah, this palette is just such a treasure, and I still enjoy it so much to this day. I'm very curious which look out of the three was your personal favorite. If I had to pick a look that I enjoyed the most, I think the look we did today was probably the most fitting with the theme of like fall inspired, because it featured all the colors of the turning leaves in the fall. But my personal favorite, I think, was look number 2, where we layered Wicked Envy together with Blood Moon 005, because I just love the effect that those two created together. And I wanted to throw in a little extra here, because I noticed a lot of you really enjoyed that look, and the idea of like combining these shades to create a new shade. And I wanted to let you know, if you wanted to create a brighter version of that look, and you've got the Petalmorphosis palette, there is a brighter like lime olive green in there, and there's also a peachy like sparkly shade. When you smoosh those two together, you create essentially the look we created the previous time, but less smoky and brighter. Drop a comment if you would like me to demo this look for you on my channel, because I would be more than happy to. But essentially it's the same thing that we did last time, only using these two shades from Petalmorphosis. Anyway, do let me know what your favorite look was. As I also mentioned in my description box in the previous video, I think I might just do this with all of the motherships. Like, I might do a little mini-series featuring 3 looks with each of the motherships, because honestly, I've really been into my motherships lately, and I think all of you would appreciate this content. And as you heard, I'm currently not interested in purchasing anything new, which means that we have to, you know, see each other and talk about older makeup. Hopefully that's okay. Anyhow, I'm going to run to work now. As usual, thank you so much for watching. Of course, don't forget to let me know what you thought about the look that we created today, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!